live. And I like it how he has each order explained to him in good detail before he signs it. Joe Biden didn't do any of that. He had auto pen. Auto pen shouldn't even make his shit valid. Joe Biden kept talking about charity. Here we go. Like, subscribe, share,
but the commutations would be the ones that we'll take a look and maybe it'll stay that way or it'll go to.
Sorry.
Again, more of those orders will be signed. It looks like he is signing them now as we have this camera. Let's pop up the audio.
We hope they come out tonight, frankly. We're expecting it. Approximately 1,500 people, six commutations.
Were there any cases you did not inform Department of people?
We're looking at different things, but the commutations would be the ones that we'll take a look and maybe it'll stay that way or it'll go to the part.
And the order does require the Bureau of Prisons to act immediately on receipt of the pardons and commutation orders. Sir, this is an
Why don't we get that down so they can get them going right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. This is a proclamation guaranteeing the state's protection against invasion based on the current crisis at the southern border. It invokes various executive powers relating to the ongoing invasion at the southern border.
Mr. President, what makes you confident that those are not going to be blocked by the courts?
I don't think they will. I don't think they can be. They're very straight up. Why don't you take that and go over here? Can you get him over here? Not on the side angle. You mind? Just go right over here with your friends. Okay.
Sir, this is an executive order realigning the United States refugee admission program to better align with American principles and American interests. Executive order is about protecting America from foreign terrorists and other national security and public safety threats. Again, a crisis at the border, but it goes beyond that and it implicates other executive powers as well.
Yeah.
President Trump, if cartels are now going to be seen as foreign terror organizations, would you think about ordering U.S. Special Forces into Mexico to take them out?
Could happen. Stranger things have happened.
Mr. President,
And that was actually
that Maduro would accept Venezuela.
Say it.
How will you make sure that Maduro would accept Venezuela?
Well, we're going to see Venezuela. We're looking at Venezuela very strongly. It's a country I know very well for a lot of reasons, and well, it was a great country 20 years ago, and now it's a mess.
Sir, can we expect ICE raids starting tomorrow in major cities?
What does that mean?
Can we expect ICE raids in major cities?
I don't want to say when, but it's going to happen. It has to happen, or we're not going to have a country left.
This is actually an executive order designating the cartels and other organizations to be foreign terrorist organizations.
That's a big one.
Yes, sir.
People have wanted to do this for years. So they are now designated as terrorist organizations, foreign. And Mexico probably doesn't want that. But we have to do what's right. They're killing our people. They're killing 250, 300,000 American people a year. Not 100, like has been reported for 15 years. It's probably 300,000.
This is an executive.
Mexico doesn't want that. How are you going to deal with this?
I don't know. You'll have to ask them.
Sir, this is an executive order entitled Protecting the American People Against Invasion, which again deals with the southern border and the unprecedented admission of illegal aliens across the southern border.
What do you see the biggest national security threat to the U.S., Mr. President? What's going to be your priority on foreign policy?
Say,
What's going to be your priority on foreign policy? What do you see as the biggest mission?
foreign policy is a big statement. I mean, my priority on foreign policy is going to be to keep America safe. Very simple. It's a big question, though. That's a very big
Who
question.
is going to be the first foreign leader that you plan to meet, or who are you going to call tomorrow on your first day?
I've already been meeting people. I've been meeting them. I've been talking to them. I met with Prime Minister Trudeau, like all Governor Trudeau. I met with numerous foreign leaders. Go ahead.
Sir, this next order relates to the definition of birthright citizenship under the 14th Amendment of the United States.
That's a good one. Birthright. That's a big one.
What about that one in the court? That one is likely to be.
Could be. I think we have good grounds, but you could be right. I mean, you'll find out. It's ridiculous. We're the only country in the world that does this with birthright, as you know. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. But, you know, we'll see. We have very good grounds.
Sir,
People have wanted to do this for decades.
Sir, this is a proclamation declaring a national emergency at the southern border of the United States.
That's a big one. A lot of big ones, huh? You know what that means, right?
President Trump, did President Biden leave you a letter?
He may have. What? Don't they leave it on the desk? I don't know. Oh,
What's in
thank
that?
you, Peter. It could have been years before we found this. Wow, thank you.
Will you be standing outside?
Maybe we should all read it together.
Let's read it.
Well, maybe I'll read it first and then make that
That's
determination.
great.
Peter, thank you very much. I may not have seen this for months.
Happy to help with the passing of the torch.
I did. I left Tim one in the desk just like this.
What are you talking about?
The unification of our country. You know, I didn't know that he gave a pardon to his family because he did it during my speech.
He didn't tell you in the letter?
No, he didn't tell me. No. He did it. They released it during my speech. I mean, during my speech. So all I could do was say, excuse me, I'd like to come back and speak some more. So, no, we were saying right about that.
Mr. President,
It's bad precedent, obviously.
where are you thinking on tariffs on Mexico, given these actions you're signing on the border?
Well, we're thinking in terms of 25% on Mexico and Canada because they're allowing vast numbers of people. Canada's a very bad abuser also. Vast numbers of people to come in and fentanyl to come in.
When do you think you would enact those?
I think February 1st.
Are you planning on leaving notice of that?
I think we'll do it February 1st.
25% of both, sir,
Sir,
On each.
on each, yes.
this is an executive order taking a large number of executive actions to secure our southern border.
Okay? Sounds reasonable.
President Trump, you remember 4 years ago, Barack Obama had told you that the top threat to the country was going to be North Korea. Did Joe Biden tell you what he thinks the top threat to this country is?
No.
Why not?
I think we have a lot of them. Right now, I think we have a lot. I think North Korea turned out to be good. I was very friendly with him. He liked me. I liked him. We got along very well. They thought that was a tremendous threat. Now, he is a nuclear power, but we got along. I think you'll be happy to see him coming back.
And
I think he has tremendous condo capability. He's got a lot of shoreline.
Are you going to work with countries from South America to coordinate on immigration?
About who?
Or immigration in general?
This is an executive order. Sorry, sir.
I'm fine with legal immigration. I like it. We need people, and I'm absolutely fine with it. We want to have it. We need it because we're going to have a lot of companies coming in to avoid tariffs. You know, if you don't want tariffs, all you have to do is build your plants in the U.S. So we're going to have a lot of workers coming in, but we have to have legal immigration.
Do you have a date in mind for when you want to put in on the China tariffs?
Which one?
50%?
No. You're talking about which? Say it again.
The China tariffs, the raw
China.
China tariffs.
Well, as you know, I put on large tariffs on China, and they've really been forced to leave them. And if we didn't leave them, you wouldn't have one steel mill that's open in this country, because they were dumping massive amounts of steel. We've taken in hundreds of billions of dollars from China because they were unable to terminate the tariffs I put on China because it was too much money and the budgets didn't work, and other reasons too. No, I mean, we're going to have meetings and calls with President Xi. I spoke to President Xi last week, as you know. Did you know that? I had a very good phone call.
Did you agree some with NATO this morning? Are you planning to meet with NATO allies?
No, NATO has to pay more money. NATO has to pay 5%. We are, we're in the Ukraine war by $200 billion more than NATO. It's ridiculous because it affects them a lot more. We have an ocean in between. And we've spent $200 billion more on Ukraine than NATO has spent. And they've got to equalize.
Did you talk to Xi about the Ukraine war?
Yeah.
Because China and Brazil together has a proposal to bring Russia and Ukraine to talk.
That's good. That's fine. I'm ready.
When are you going to talk with the Brazilian president?
How did Brazil get involved? This is a new one.
When are you going to talk to Lula?
Are you from Brazil?
I'm from Brazil.
Ah,
When are you
that's
talking?
why they're involved, I guess.
When are you going to talk with the Brazilian president? How do you see your relationship with Latin America and Brazil?
Great. Should be good. They need us much more than we need them. We don't need them. They need us. Everybody needs us.
It sounds like you will not proceed with additional China tariffs necessarily, depending on how talks go with President Xi. Is that correct?
What does it define that?
Well, you're asking, you pledged in the campaign potentially 10% tariff on China or as much as...
Because of fentanyl.
Right, so I'm asking where you're...
That's only because of fentanyl. There are other things too.
Are additional...
And a very big thing is the Panama Canal. China controls the Panama Canal. What's that all about? They're not supposed to be good. When Jimmy Carter gave it, which was a terrible mistake, he didn't do it. He didn't give it to China. He gave it to Panama. And China controls the Panama Canal.
So are China tariffs...
And we're not going to allow that to happen.
Are they still on the table or is that on?
We're not going to allow that to happen.
Thank you, sir.
What can we expect of the countries in NATO that spend the least amount of money, like Spain, France, below the 5%?
Spain is very low. And yet, are they a BRICS nation?
What?
They're a BRICS nation, Spain.
Okay.
You know what a BRICS nation is? You'll figure it out. But, and if the BRICS nations want to do that, that's okay, but we're going to put at least a 100% tariff on the business they do with the United States. You know what the BRICS is, right? You guys know.
Brazil,
You know what I'm
Russia.
saying, right? You know what I'm saying.
So Spain is not...
This is
So it's not even a threat. In fact, since I made that statement, Biden said, well, they have us over a barrel. I said, no, we have them over a barrel. And there's no way they're going to be able to do that.
This is an executive order relating to...
100% tariffs, those countries, like Spain.
As a BRICS nation, yes.
But
They'll have 100% tariff if they so much as even think about doing what they've done.
Can you explain how is
Which, and therefore they'll give it up immediately. So will China give it up.
So this is about reforming the system of hiring in the federal government to ensure that merit is the lodestar of hiring decisions.
As per the Supreme Court.
Other matters, yes, sir.
Mr. President, here's a big deal, merit. Our country is going to be based on merit again. Can you believe it?
Mr. President, you consider it as the Russia-Ukraine war in the first 8 months. Where do things stand right now, and how do you protect?
Well, there's only half a day. I have another half a day left. We'll see. We want to get it done.
This is an order creating and implementing the Department of Governmental Efficiency, known as DOGE.
Okay, that's a big one.
Is Elon Musk going to get a press plane office?
No, he's getting an office for about 20 people that we're hiring to make sure that these get implemented. We have a problem in this country. He's on an executive order. It doesn't get done for 6 months. As an example, when we allow the J6 hostages to go out, it might not be approved under the old days for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 6 months. You know, they had a good ruling for the Supreme Court, and it's like nothing happened. That ruling was 6 months ago, you know that. And it was like they didn't have a ruling. They've been treated very unfair. The judges have been absolutely brutal. The prosecutors have been brutal. Nobody's ever treated people in this country like that.
Mr. President, are you commuting the sentences with anyone who assaulted a police officer on January 6th?
Well, we're looking at 2 police officers, actually, that Washington police officers who went after an illegal, and things happened, and they ended up putting them in jail. They got 5-year jail sentences, you know the case. And we're looking at that in order to give them a, we're gonna give them a break.
But is there clemency in your action today for anyone?
Well, it would be a part of, that would be a part of it. So what I'm talking about would be a part of it.
Yes, sir. This
Should there be punishment for the people who assaulted law enforcement officers that day?
Well, I will say this, they've been in jail for a long time already. I see murderers in this country get 2 years, 1 year, and maybe no time. So they've already been in jail for a long time. These people have been destroyed. What they've done to these people is outrageous. There's rarely been anything like it in the history of our country. And even people that were aggressive, and in many cases I believe they happen to be outside agitators, but you know, what do I know? But I think they were outside agitators. There were outside agitators involved. And obviously the FBI was involved because Ray admitted the FBI was involved. Didn't he say 23 people indirectly or directly were involved, and it was in 26? That's a lot of people. Now we got to take care of these people have been treated so badly. It's never happened before. What happened in Seattle where they took over a big portion of the city? What happened in Portland where they burned down the city every day and people died? Nothing happened to anybody. But they go after these people violently. I mean, they're still going after brand new people. They found somebody else with a picture. There's never been anything like this. And you know, it's almost 100%. Think of this, almost 100% of the people are convicted. 100%. It's Washington, D.C. People go into a trial and they say, oh, I have a wonderful lawyer and I didn't do anything wrong. And they end up in shackles almost immediately and jail. No, well, I can let it happen.
About doing that, we have shown interest in buying it, but is there any other option that will satisfy you?
About what?
Greenland, instead of buying it.
Finland?
Greenland.
Well, Greenland is a wonderful place. We need it for international security. And I'm sure that Denmark will come along. I think it's costing them a lot of money to maintain it, to keep it. The people of Greenland are not happy with Denmark, as you know. I think they're happy with us. We had representatives, my son had representatives, went up there 2 weeks ago, and they like us. So we'll see what happens. But Greenland is necessary, not for us, it's necessary for international security. You have Russian boats all over the place, you have China boats all over the place, warships, and they can't maintain it.
Because everyone's been talking like this,
Who?
President Putin, sir.
I'll be meeting with President Putin.
When?
I don't know, I can't speak, Senate. So the first foreign trip typically has been with UK, but I did it with Saudi Arabia last time because they agreed to buy $450 billion worth of our product. I said, I'll do it, but you have to buy American product, and they agreed to do that. They bought $450 billion. It was the least reported story I've ever been involved in.
And now, where are you going to go now?
Well, I don't know. If Saudi Arabia wanted to buy another 450 or 500, we'll up it for all the inflation.
Mr. President, you say you were going
I think
to
I
end
probably
the
will.
war first day. How do you plan to end the Ukraine war?
Well, we're going to try and get it done as quickly as possible.
Do you want to push Israel and Saudi
It should have
Arabia?
never started. You know, the war with Ukraine and Russia should have never started. It would have never started if I were president.
Will you push Israel and Saudi Arabia to normalize relations?
I don't think I have to push it. I think it's going to happen, but maybe not quite yet. But it'll end up being in the Accords, the Abraham Accords.
President Trump,
I think Saudi Arabia will end up being in the Abraham Accords.
This year?
Could be, but, you know, so, not in a very long way. Oh, look at that, it says TikTok. My, what is that all about?
First, we have Alaska, sir. This is an executive order relating to unleashing Alaska's potential as an energy reservoir for the entire nation.
And what about Anwar?
I believe that would be included in aspects of the
So
order.
we're opening up Anwar.
On the TikTok piece, President Trump, you and your members of your team now used to warn about the dangers of TikTok spying on Americans. What changed that you're not worried about that anymore?
Well, it depends on the deal. I mean, I may not do the deal, or I may do the deal. TikTok is worthless. Worthless. If I don't approve it, it has to close. I learned that from the people that own it. If I don't do the deal, it's worthless. Worth nothing. If I do the deal, it's worth maybe $1 trillion. $1 trillion. So if I do the deal I'm talking about doing it for the United States. If I do the deal for the United States, then I think we should get half. In other words, I think the U.S. should be entitled to get half of TikTok. And congratulations, TikTok is a good partner. And that would be worth, you know, could be $500 billion or something. It's crazy, the numbers are crazy. But it's worthless if the president doesn't sign, then it's worthless. If the president does sign, it's worth maybe $1 trillion. So I think, like a joint venture, I think we would have a joint venture with the people from TikTok. We'll see what happens. I mean, that's one of many ideas I've had.
The CEO is around, and did he say that he's open to that idea?
Who?
The CEO of TikTok is around.
Oh, I think he'd probably like it. Because he's got nothing. I mean, they really have nothing. It's passed in Congress. It gives the president a right to make a deal or to close it. And we have 90 days to make that decision. But I could see making a deal where the U.S. gets 50% of TikTok, polices it a little bit or a lot, depends on them. But remember, they make telephones in China, they make all sorts of things in China. Nobody ever complains about that. Here they're complaining about this. There's so many different products made in China, and nobody ever complained about it. The only one they complain about is TikTok. And TikTok is largely young people. I guess I have a warm spot for TikTok that I didn't have originally, but you know, I went on TikTok, and I won young people by 36%, Peter. And Republicans typically don't do too well with young people, but it's a different Republican Party.
Would the U.S. government talk executive of TikTok then, or how would it get that 50%?
No, you take 50% of TikTok for the approval that TikTok could continue in business. And they'd have a great partner. The U.S. would be their partner. But the U.S. essentially would be paying the value of TikTok.
Would there be a private sector owner as well?
Could be, yeah, could be a lot. Tell you what, every rich person has called me about TikTok.
He wanted to block TikTok. Why did you change your mind?
Because I got to use it. And remember, TikTok is largely about kids, young kids. If China's going to get information about young kids, I don't know. I think, to be honest with you, I think we have bigger problems than that. But you know, when you take a look at telephones that are made in China and all the other things that are made in China, military equipment made in China, TikTok, I think TikTok is not their biggest problem. But there's big value in TikTok if it gets approved. If it doesn't get approved, there's no value. So if we create that value, why aren't we entitled to like half?
Does
Biden ever do news conferences like this? How many news conferences, Peter, has he done like this?
Like this?
None.
0.
And it would be 0 for the next infinity. For infinity, it would be 0.
Mr. President, when you say the President is going to help implement the executive orders, I think you mentioned implementation.
Elon, no. Elon's very busy sending rocket ships up to various places with lots of satellites on them.
What is your reaction to the confirmation of Marco Rubio, and what does it mean for Latin America?
Which one?
Marco Rubio, as the...
Marco Rubio. You said Marco. Marco.
Marco Rubio.
Yeah, I think he's great. I think Marco's doing a fantastic job. I think he's going to get a lot of votes. I think he's going to be at 90% or something. I mean, I'm hearing very good. People know him. They know him in the Senate. They know he's good. He's doing a good job. I don't know. I can't tell you. I don't know what's going to happen with that. He's got He's got some very strong ideas to mark up.
You signed, did you sign the TikTok order?
Yeah,
Yes, that was just signed.
President Maduro just said
just signed it.
How many?
he is changing Venezuela, changing power. Are you still committed with Maduro leaving power in
Well,
Venezuela?
we're gonna find out about that too, because we're gonna probably stop buying oil from Venezuela. We don't need their oil.
Another embargo like the first term?
Well, it could be, but we don't wanna buy, we don't have to buy their oil. We have plenty of oil for ourselves, so
President Trump,
that'll change Venezuela quite a bit.
President Trump, there was a lot of concern about this during the campaign. The question that only works today, are you a dictator on day one?
No, no. I can't imagine even being golden. No, I believe in the sanctity of the vote. The Democrats didn't because they cheated like dogs, but I believe in the sanctity, and this was too big to rig. This last election was just too big to rig. But, really the opposite.
When do you plan to speak to President Putin?
Could be very soon.
And you talked a bit about Ukraine and Russia, but how long do you think it would take to end that conflict? And
I have to speak to President Putin. We're gonna have to find out. He can't be thrilled. He's not doing so well. I mean, he's grinding it out, but most people thought that war would have been over in about 1 week. And now you're into 3 years, right? So he can't be thrilled. It's not making him look very good. Well, now eventually, I mean, it's a big machine, so things will happen, but, I think he'd be very well off to end that war. We have numbers that almost 1 million Russian soldiers have been killed. About 700,000 Ukrainian soldiers are killed. Russia's bigger, they have more soldiers to lose. But that's no way to run a country.
What did your TikTok order do, Mr. President?
Just gave me the right to sell it or close it. Essentially with TikTok, I have the right to either sell it or close it. And we'll make that determination. And we may have to get an approval from China too, I'm not sure. But I'm sure they'll approve it. And if they don't approve it, it would be somewhat of a hostile act, I think. But it's good for China if it gets approved.
Mr. President, you're not guaranteeing that TikTok will be around after 98%.
No, but it could very well be. It makes sense for it to be, because it's got tremendous value. But if we create the value by approving, in other words, that approval gives it tremendous value. If that's the case, then we should be entitled to 50% as a country. You understand? You haven't heard that one before, right? That's called the joint venture. And nobody ever thought that way before. Well, I think you have a lot of people that would be interested in TikTok with the United States as a partner.
Mr. President, what was it like walking into the Oval Office this evening?
Oh, what a great feeling. One of the better feelings I've ever had.
Do you like this sound better now than in 2017?
Well, we're very experienced now. You would say nobody's ever had experience like I have. I've dealt with some very good people. I've dealt with some very bad people, and I know who the bad ones are and the good ones are. Don't forget, I was very successful in primarily the real estate business. And people used to say, who's worse, a politician or a vicious real estate developer? And I would say, the real estate developer is far worse. But after about 3 months and getting to know scum like Adam Schiff and other people like that, I said, no, actually, real estate people are quite nice by comparison.
You said you plan to speak with President Putin soon. What about President Zelensky, and what's your message?
Yeah, I would, but he's told me he wants to make a deal. Zelensky wants to make a deal. I don't know if Putin does, he might not, I don't know. He should make a deal. I think he's destroying Russia by not making a deal. I think Russia's gonna be in big trouble. You take a look at their economy, you take a look at the inflation in Russia. So I would hope, I got along with him great, and, I would hope he wants to make a deal.
Mr. President, are you keeping U.S. sanctions on Russia until he makes a deal?
Well, sanctions or tariffs. I think the word tariff is much better because it keeps your dollar stronger. I think tariffs are more effective. I mean, I used sanctions on Iran. Iran was broke. When I left office, Iran was broke. They had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah, none. They were flat broke. And October 7th would have never happened. And I think you all know that. It would have never happened. They had no money. Now they're rich, but, you know, they're weakened in a different way. I would say that the one attack by Israel really set them back. It really set them back. The pages and others. You know, the attack on air defense was a bad attack for Iran.
What are you citing now?
It's an executive order relating to reforms to the federal workforce, including to the senior executive service.
We're getting rid of all of the cancer. I call it cancer. The cancer caused by the Biden administration.
How confident are you, Mr. President, that you can keep the ceasefire in Gaza and conclude the free trade deal?
I'm not confident. It's not our war, it's their war, but I'm not confident. But I think they're very weakened on the other side.
You support the two-state
Gaza, boy, I looked at a picture of Gaza. Gaza is like a massive demolition site. That place it's really got to be rebuilt in a different way.
Do you plan to help rebuilding Gaza?
I might. You know, Gaza is interesting. It's a phenomenal location. On the sea, best weather. You know, everything's good. It's like some beautiful things could be done with it, but it's very interesting. But some fantastic things could be done with Gaza.
How do you see the future in governance for Gaza?
Well, it depends. I can't imagine you could have, well, you certainly can't have the people that were there. Most of them are dead, by the way. Most of them are dead. But they didn't exactly run it well. Run viciously and badly. So you can't have that.
Mr. President, TikTok, sir, you pause any decision on Chinese tariffs until you know what the resolution on TikTok will be?
No, if China didn't approve it, we could put tariffs on China. Don't forget, China charges us tariffs, and we charge them very little, except for what I did. I put a lot of, we took in hundreds of billions of dollars. But until I came along, China never paid 10 cents to this country. They ripped us off, and they never paid anything. But, like, if we wanted to make a deal with TikTok, and it was a good deal, and China wouldn't approve it, then I think ultimately they'd approve it, because we put tariffs on China. Maybe. I'm not saying I would, but you certainly could do that. And if we said, well, you're not going to approve it, then that's a certain hostility, and we'll put tariffs of 25, 30, 40, 50%, even 100%. And if we did that, I think they'd approve it.
President Trump, you've seen the other living presidents a couple times in the last few months. If you ever had to call on one of them for advice about anything that's going on, which one would you call?
It's interesting. Well, I thought Bill Clinton was a very good politician. I don't think he was used properly. I think they disrespected him. When Hillary was running, he came back and he said, you know, you better get up to Michigan and Wisconsin. You remember that, Peter? Every house has a Trump sign on it. And they all laughed at him because the Republicans hadn't won Michigan or Wisconsin for decades, long time. And they all laughed at Bill Clinton. Like, the hell does he know? And he turned out to be right, because I won both of them. And then we just won both in this election, too. We won Wisconsin and Michigan and every other swing state. We won all the swing states, all 7. They talked about 7 swing states. We won them all. So, but Bill Clinton he had a great political sense, I think.
It looked like you were having a good conversation with President Obama at the present
I was.
conversation.
And you'd like to know what it was? Everybody wants to know. And I wouldn't want to know. But we were having some crazy conversation. Why do you ask me a question like that? You don't. I don't think you want to know. You might not. You might be insulted.
It's an executive order relating to holding former government officials accountable for unlawful disclosure of sensitive information. This next one, sir, is a declaration of a national energy emergency.
That's a big one. You know what that allows you to do? That means you can do whatever you have to do to get out of that problem. And we do have that kind of an emergency.
President Trump, at some point will you use your powers of the presidency to tell Americans who are concerned about drones know.
Yeah, oh,
Maybe we
good.
should know
Yeah,
what
I will.
Can you tell us
In
now?
fact, I'd like to know because I just got here.
Well, what do you think?
I just came here. I've been here for what, 15 minutes now.
Do people listening to this still aren't
And
live?
I gotta read this letter too, because of you, I found this letter.
I can read it for you.
It's interesting. Yeah, I know you would. Your father would too.
But is it anything from, is there anything that you worry
No, I think it's terrible. I would like to find out what it is and tell the people.
And can you commit to some kind of?
In fact, I'd like to do that. Could we find out what that was, Susie? Okay? Yeah, why don't we find out immediately? I can't imagine it's an enemy or there would have been, people would have gotten blown up all over. Maybe they were testing things. I don't know why they wouldn't have said what it was. They had a lot of them flying over Bedminster, which is interesting.
And with the events today and yesterday, was everything moved inside just for cold weather, or was there some kind of security?
No security. Because they had everything shut down to drones. You can shut that down pretty easily if you're sophisticated. They're very sophisticated, these people. No, it was just cold weather. And we made a good move because, first of all, I thought it was incredible in the Capitol today. You know why I liked it? Because I got great reviews on that speech. I got great reviews. Can you believe it? They actually were paying. Maybe the fake news was staged and unreasonable, correct. But I thought it was, I think having it in the Capitol is obviously, you can take care of the people you have to take care of. The city was booming. And if we would have done it outside, people would have been hurt because
No. What's up? Come on, man. Help me. Fine. Good. Please? No. Is she a liar? No. Okay, whatever. What? Okay, whatever, sure. You love me? What? You love me?
Workers, USPS.
Check out Town Clearance with its plus-size knit slack tool for only $0 now. Upgrade your style with the trousers.
Workers, USPS, Postal Service rallies. I seen one inside of Detroit this weekend. This is happening in Chicago. Across the country, postal workers are protesting the potential privatization of the post office. Check it out.
To be clear, the Trump administration has not announced any plans to privatize the United States Postal Service just yet. But amidst rumors of job cuts and a potential merger with the Commerce Department, thousands of U.S. postal workers are rallying across the country this weekend, including right here in Chicago. Hundreds of unionized letter carriers and their leaders packed into Chicago's Federal Plaza this morning to send a message to those in Washington who might come after their jobs.
We're going to send a message today from downtown Chicago to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Hands off our mail service.
The rally is one of more than 200 that have taken place nationwide over the last few days as the embattled Postal Service fights to keep its independence after President Trump last month addressed rumors that USPS might be absorbed into the Commerce Department, a move that would effectively make it part of the executive branch of government.
We want to have a post office that works well and doesn't lose massive amounts of money. And we're thinking about doing that, and it'll be a form of a merger, but it'll remain the Postal Service, and I think it'll operate a lot better than it has been over the years.
For nearly 60 years now, USPS has funded itself without taxpayer dollars. But it's no secret the agency is in dire financial straits, losing nearly $10 billion last year.
That's crazy. That is crazy. No private entity, because that is a false narrative, and that it is completely private and independent of taxpayer dollars. We all know that that's BS because the taxpayers continue to hit them with an infusion of cash so that they can remain solvent. But to lose, listen. Any agency, any business, any entity that is losing $10 billion plus per year, something got to give. Something has to give. There's no way that you can sit here and tell me that we need to keep on our books a $10 billion loss. You know why they protesting, right? They protesting because then they're not going to have them cushy jobs no more. It's going to have to actually get up and work. They're going to have to actually get up and work. Post office has been on life support since the inception of the post office. They're going to have to get up and work. I know what y'all do inside of those postal offices. I know for real, what y'all really doing inside of the post office. You don't think that I got people that I post that actually work in these post office places that tell me that y'all be playing cards and shooting dice and chilling and falling asleep, getting caught falling asleep and not even being fired? I know what's really going on, but they don't want to give up them cushy jobs. I think the post office is one of the last places that still get a pension.
It's that time of the year. Burlington's spring deals are in the air. Stop.
It is 6 o'clock here on the couch in New York City. Cash is off, and we've got Kaylee with us on this Tuesday.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Indeed. No turning back now, Kaylee.
No turning back. I want to, but I can't.
That's right. We're putting it in drive because it is Tuesday, March 25th, 2025. Open the Fox and Friends. Listen to this. The FBI is now cracking down on domestic terrorism as they were quick. And we are seeing across the country regarding Teslas in the dealerships and the vehicles. As officers find explosive devices in a showroom in Austin, Texas. Been awesome, man. Imagine that. Plus, President Trump is invoking state secrets privilege as he fights the courts on deportation flights to El Salvador. It's pretty clear how one judge feels about it.
Nazis got better treatment under the Alien Enemy Act than has happened here.
Reuters are Tom Holman not happy about that reference. He'll be here.
And 23andMe is filing for bankruptcy, leaving millions of customers concerned about their data. Kurt the Cyber Guy is here to tell you what you should do if you're wondering.
Fox and Friends starts right now, and remember, mornings are better with Brian and Friends.
All right, we'll talk about that later. And while the Trump administration is invoking the state secrets privilege as it refuses to give a judge more information on the migrant deportation flights to El Salvador.
The DOJ argues that revealing more details could harm U.S. national security.
Madeline Rivera is taking it all in from Washington, D.C. So, Madeline, the Department of Justice is very clear. Judge, you want some details, we're not going to give them to you.
Yeah, exactly. And this showdown is escalating, you guys. The Trump administration says the court has all the facts it needs, adding that giving more information would not only jeopardize national security, it could also compromise foreign relations and future counterterrorism operations. Attorney General Pam Bondi says she received declarations from Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem about the risks. Federal Judge James Boasberg wanted several questions answered, including what time those deportation flights to El Salvador took place. Earlier on Monday, Boasberg rejected a request to lift a temporary block on those deportations, saying the People administration is looking to remove under the Alien Enemies Act should first get a chance to deny that they're a member of Tren de Aragua. Boasberg saying they may not be deported until a court has been able to decide the merits of their challenge. A D.C. appeals court appeared split yesterday on whether the deportations should continue under the Alien Enemies Act. Judge Patricia Millett, an Obama appointee, appeared to be on the side of the plaintiffs. Listen here.
Here was that there were plane loads of people. I mean, it's a class action. There were plane loads of people. There were no procedures in place to notify people. Nazis got better treatment under the Alien Enemy Act than has happened here.
The Justice Department disputed the analogy. Judge Justin Walker, a Trump appointee, appeared more empathetic to the DOJ's arguments, saying the lawsuit should have been filed in Texas. One judge, Karen Henderson, a George H.W. Bush appointee, did not ask any questions, so she could be the deciding vote. The three judges could rule as narrowly or broadly as they see fit, and that order could come down any day now. Lauren, Steve, Kaylee, and Brian.
All right. Excellent. Thank you very much. So we got two courts going at one time. Yeah. We have the judge from Boasberg from 2 weeks ago, who's still trying to get to the bottom of it. He's so hung up on were the planes actually in the air, how far were they and back. We still don't even know how he feels about the whole flights in general, but you can put two and two together. And then you have this Trump judge and one isn't. And together, they seem to be having different views on the merits of this case and the use of that 1798 Aliens Act. So we'll see where this goes. But regardless, the loser's going to the Supreme Court, don't you think?
Well, of course it's going to go to the Supreme Court, but the Trump administration tried to be diplomatic with this judge. And I pretty much have been saying this on the program. Essentially what they're saying is they're using the United States versus Reynolds in 1953, which is the state's secret privilege act. And essentially what they're saying is, if we were to tell you, then we're going to show you how we gather the intelligence. So when you got federal agents that are in chat rooms or undercover with Tren de Aragua and other foreign terrorists or cartels, if we turn that into court, then the defense, which work for these people, are going to turn it over to the enemies. And so you're going to put our officers as well as our intelligence gathering at way. And so essentially, there is nothing the judge can do right now. It's going to go to the Supreme Court.
Well, and ultimately, the judge just wants details. He wants to know how many people were on the flights and who were they, and well, he's got some of it, but he wants to know what time they took off, because he knows what time. There are commercial flight data centers out there where this information has already been published. He just wants to see whether or not the government is telling him the truth. But ultimately, the judge said yesterday that the sole issue for him is about due process, whether or not these people who were put on the airplane got their due process. He said he did not have to resolve the thorny question of whether the judiciary has authority to assess if the Alien Enemies Act can be used against TVA as a group. So he's not going to do that. He just wants to, Kaylee, and it's great we've got a lawyer here on the couch, he just wants to know whether or not those migrants got due process.
Yeah, so one thing that's interesting that I find is when you look at these preliminary injunctions, they're supposed to be rare and very narrow. And Judge Boasberg, our colleague Carrie Kupek pointed this out, it's a great point, admitted that the Trump administration may prevail on the merits of this. And the entire reason for a temporary restraining order is you're unlikely to prevail on the merits. So he's kind of undermining his own logic. You know, you're always hesitant to read the tea leaves in these appeals court oral arguments, but the George H.W. Bush judge was silent the whole time. So no one knows how that judge is coming down. And then you have the Trump-appointed judge, who I would be hopeful pointed to one piece of evidence who said, look, this could harm the president's foreign affairs power. So I'm confident on him potentially. And then the Obama judge, I mean, the Nazi comment that she made
wasn't necessary at all.
So it's going to come down to that George H.W. Bush judge. I think Trump ultimately wins, but it may be, to your point, at the Supreme Court limits.
Meanwhile, Tom Homan is not slowing down at all. I could not believe this number. He said this, majority of the 370 being significant criminals. He's talking about what happened over in Massachusetts. These arrests include 8 foreign fugitives, including 4 who are wanted for murder or to serve on a criminal sentence for murder, along with drug traffickers, child sexual predators, and numerous other violent public safety threats. So this was a collection of illegals, lethal illegals, over in Massachusetts. I was encouraged to see the governor saying we're not a sanctuary state. Right. You know, it's Boston, it's a sanctuary city, but we're in a sanctuary city. They were proud of the way they worked.
So the administration changed the strategy a little bit when it came down to this bus. Remember that in Boston, the mayor provoked Tom Homan. She essentially said, you're not welcome in the city. What the administration tried to do to begin with was to have media along on those ride-alongs to show the public what was going on. Well, leaks started to happen. So Tom Homan put a complete blackout on this, and he didn't even release this until days later. But this is what they found when they were in Boston right there. You got a Dominican alien charged and arrested with multiple drug distribution crimes and fentanyl trafficking, a Brazilian alien charged with manslaughter, DUI homicide, breaking and entering and larceny. You got a Honduran alien convicted of child rape and assault. You got a Brazilian alien wanted for murder. You got homicide. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And good on Tom Homan. He captured the people, kept his officers safe, and there was no leaks on this bus.
Well, and he had said ahead of time, I'm going to bring hell to Boston, and he did indeed with this sweep, and it was coordinated, and it was very precise, and they were all armored up just in case, because a bunch of them undoubtedly had guns, were armed. It was the FBI, it was ATF, it was a CBP, and DEA, and they did wind up, of that big number that we told you about, 370, that is to say, 200 had significant criminal convictions, and they did release details about those 14 Lawrence, that you were talking about, but there are no names associated with these criminals, and no word where they are being held. And so those are the 2 things. And you know, given the fact that we were talking a little bit ago about the Venezuelans, where are those people being housed? Now people are wondering, okay, they round them up, then move.
You know, a note about Mayor Michelle Wu. She gave her State of the City address, and at the very end of it, she said, God bless our people. God save whoever messes with Boston. Well, the people who are messing with Boston are who Lawrence just quoted. Tom Homan said he found 9 examples of rapists who were in jail, who were let out before they could be taken by ICE. So who's messing with your city are these individuals. And Mayor Wu, I mean, look, I can't believe there's some political calculation here, but just a reminder, she has a challenge coming up. It's from Josh Kraft, you know, the son of a famous baseball owner. And maybe she thinks this is what Boston wants. I have a different calculation as Tom Homan can address at 7:20 a.m. here on the show.
I have a question before we move on. When it comes to due process for the 370 and the 269 that were flied over, they scoop them up, they do their background, ICE takes them down, they scoop them up. They're not citizens. What is due process for an illegal alien accused criminal?
So you are entitled to a court hearing. However, if you have the Alien Enemies Act, you are allowed to go over that because it's considered a wartime act. So President Trump, the argument is there's an invasion. One of the arguments is from Nicaragua wants to establish territorial integrity in the country. Therefore, we're exempt from providing that due process. So colorful argument has only been used 3 times, but maybe it will be used here.
And that is why it's enhanced, right? And that's why everybody's looking at it. And we will keep you posted. In the meantime, cash the brand new FBI director, made it very clear that apparently now, given so much violence against owners of Tesla and people who, work at the dealerships are imperiled because there have been those attacks, they now started a task force to crack down on the Tesla attacks. And Cash sent this media warning, essentially, last night. It said the FBI has been investigating the increase in violent activity toward Tesla, and over the last few days, we have taken additional steps to crack down and coordinate our response. This is domestic terrorism. Those responsible will be pursued, caught, and brought to justice. And so that is one of the reasons why a couple of days ago, the FBI essentially put out a PSA saying, okay, if you're at a Tesla dealership and you notice somebody doing these things, they could be case in the joint, and that's the problem.
No, I just don't understand. You have Rokana, who has come out multiple times and said, I condemn this.
The patch fits. Mighty Patch pimple patches will give clear looking skin overnight. Pimple with your Mighty Patch.
I wish they were just so much better hot.
I don't know. Hotter than almost summer. Hot gospel. Hotter is just better. Don't forget about hot ovens. Or hot peppers. Hot springs. Hot chocolate. Hot sandwiches. Hot soup. Hot air balloon. Hot yoga. Or hot milky tea.
We bring the hot.
Try the W2 and file your taxes 100% free. Plus, you can save this refund. Roughly 37% of filers qualify. Single form 1040 return. No schedule except for earned income tax credit, child tax credit, and student loan credit. File now.
And I just don't know, where is the media drumbeat for others to do so? I mean, there aren't other Democrats. I haven't heard Chuck Schumer. I haven't heard AOC. The list goes on. But where's the media drumbeat? Because if this was, a firebombing of some leftist liberal company, I can guarantee you there'd be a daily drumbeat on CNN, on MSNBC, New York Times, Washington Post, and do front page cover story. Where are the Republicans? Where is Mike Johnson? That doesn't exist.
No.
Why doesn't it exist?
So what the liberals are saying and some of the media is saying, this is just vandalism, right? They're almost justifying the actions, but the motive matters here. And that's what the Attorney General as well as Cash Patel is saying. They're going to use the nexus terrorism 18 U.S.C. 2331, which says essentially when you attempt to intimidate and endorse government policy and you do it for political purposes, they can charge you with domestic terrorism. And what they're saying also is it seems to be coordinated. Who's funding it? Who's coordinating it? And what you're going to end up seeing is a huge RICO case, which has Dan Bongino is involved. And I saw some interviews yesterday. There's a coordination between what's happening with the Teslas and the squatting that's going on against conservative people that are online, people that are considered influenced. There's connections that they've already been able to identify.
So if you go to people who aren't hardened criminals, that have been in a crime family, and you say, hey, you're going to jail for 5 years, you want 4.5? Tell me exactly who's paying you. Right. So I expect that to be happening at this hour, especially with Cash Patel and Dan Bongino involved. Here's Elon Musk on the risks everyone who works for Tesla is under just because he wants to bring efficiency to the government.
A lot of them are just kids, just trying to help out. They're very talented. They can get jobs for millions of dollars a year. Instead, they come here to go to units and get death threats. So thanks to the Durst team.
And we met one of them with Laura Ingraham. It was so impressive on Friday night, I think it was Thursday or Friday. He just said what he's done, what he's found, and how he's looking to change things. He goes, I'm going to give you 6 months. It's my way of giving back to the country, which is ideally is what everyone should be doing when they serve, like you did.
Not as been on this program.
Right. This guy, you haven't asked it.
If you remember, Todd's the one who brought the Pumobile. Remember that?
Oh.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Anyway, Tom was telling me that Tesla's actually put out, and I looked it up, a brochure of information for firefighters. And it says, essentially, this is how long a Tesla fire is going to burn. Even when you put water on it, it doesn't go out. And in fact, in the town he lives in, their fire department has said, because this is so dangerous, if a Tesla is in the garage and it's on fire, the house is going to burn down. So they're not going to be able to
see a lot of police departments do what Las Vegas did. They bought a fleet of cyber trucks. Not only are they great cyber trucks, bulletproof, they look great, and it would help boost up that company. He only owns 15% of the company. He heard any shareholders, not him. So now, straight ahead. Congress is prepared to question Donald Trump officials today about a secret group chat after a journalist says the administration accidentally texted him about imminent military strikes against the Houthi rebels in Yemen.
Dixon has the latest on this. Good morning, Brooke.
Good morning, guys. That's right. So you and I, Tulsi Gabbard, and CIA Director John Ratcliffe are the first two who could be grilled by Congress with a hearing today held by the Senate Intelligence Committee regarding worldwide threats. So they are just two among the 18 people included in a group chat on the encrypted messaging service Signal. And Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, said he was accidentally added to the group that discussed war plans against Houthi terror groups. Goldberg sharing these texts showing top U.S. national security officials discussing plans to carry out strikes in Yemen earlier this month, including Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who is calling out the report. Listen to this.
You're talking about a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again. Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that.
Goldberg saying he was invited into the chat by President Trump's national security advisor, and that there was highly sensitive military information in those messages.
I was invited a couple of weeks ago to connect with Michael Waltz, the national security advisor. That didn't strike me as particularly strange, given my job and his job. I was shared on a text in this group from somebody purporting to be Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense. This text contained operational military information.
Who says he was not aware about the situation. Listen.
I don't know anything about it. I'm not a big fan of The Atlantic. To me, it's a magazine that's going out of business. I think it's not much of a magazine, but I know nothing about it. Well, it couldn't have been very effective because the attack was very effective. I can tell you that. I don't know anything about it. You're telling me about it for the first time.
The White House says President Trump is standing by his team as the National Security Council confirms that the message thread reported appears to be authentic. They are now investigating how the journalist's number was added to that chain. Guys.
Well, thank you very much, Brooke. Well, I read the article, and it says that somebody identifying themselves as Mike Waltz added that person. I was talking to somebody in federal law enforcement last night, and they said that just based on having read the Atlantic article, what was revealed was classified and top secret, and this person's been down in D.C. for many years. Has never heard of government officials at that level using Signal for stuff like that. And you know, Kaylee, having been in the White House, there are certain top secret gizmos and venues that they use, and you don't use a commercial app that can be hacked.
Yeah, there's a channel that you're supposed to stay on with that kind of information. Now, I heard someone on CNN suggesting maybe there were Signal apps added to government devices. And now, all that remains to be seen. But I imagine the White House press shop would have gotten that information out by now if that were the case. Look, this was an obvious mistake, obviously. I will say, as my dad says, when you eat crow, you got to eat it hot. And the National Security Council ate it while it was hot. They did not try to deny this. They came out. They said this appears to be authentic. Good on them. The detail I'm wondering about is the Jeffrey Goldberg detail about war plans. He says there were operational details, but he did not want to share them because it would be compromising. I don't trust Jeffrey Goldberg. The last time I sat on the couch with you guys, he had the ridiculous story about Vanessa Julian. He had the suckers and losers. He is not a credible reporter. And how does this most horrific of all reporters in Washington, D.C. get added to your text chain? There are a lot of questions.
So that's literally my only question. As it relates to government officials using Signal, they all use it. They're not supposed to, but they use it. Because secrets, they use it. CIA, every single intelligence agency uses it. I know that for a fact. I talk to them on Signal. Their sources are they all use
Israel once again striking targets in Syria. Its military hitting the remaining strategic capabilities at 2 air bases in Syria yesterday. The IDF says these are the same locations in southern Syria that were hit on Friday. Since the fall of the Assad regime in December, Israel has launched hundreds of strikes in Syria, keeping weapons out of the hands of extremists. And in New York, 3 immigrants have been indicted for allegedly killing a 39-year-old homeless man, also an immigrant, on Long Island last month. All 3 suspects are facing murder charges, which carries a prison sentence of 25 years to life if convicted. The Suffolk County District Attorney saying this alleged murder was brutal. Violence such as alleged here affects us all, and we remain dedicated to holding these offenders responsible for their actions. And it is Tuesday, which means here on Fox and Friends, it is Texas Tuesday, and viewers are joining in on the fun. Kathy sending us this photo of her granddaughter Maya celebrating at the county fair in Pennsylvania. The Gardner family showing us how they brought Texas Tuesday to Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. They even invited Laura to join them next year. And as we said before, Texas Tuesday is not just for humans. Tim sending us this photo of his dog Cisco in his best cowboy hat. Love to see it. We'd also love to see more of how y'all celebrate at home. Email us your best Texas Tuesday photos at friends@foxnews.com. Just be sure to include your name and where you are from in the email.
Name and
want
I would love to
to
come.
know all about you.
Yeah, I would love to come. I love that the trend is continuing.
And speaking of Texas, Joey Jones is at the National Medal of Honor Museum down in Arlington, Texas, one of the suburbs of Dallas, because it officially opens today. Howdy, Joey.
Howdy, yeah. Good morning, guys. Listen, this place is pretty amazing. I'm standing in the middle of a museum, the National Medal of Honor Museum, that commemorates 3,528 Medal of Honor recipients. 16 are from my war, the War on Terror, of the 61 that are still living. Just in front of me here is my good buddy Kyle Carpenter, a whole exhibit for him, somebody I recovered with. But when you look around this place, I've only made it halfway through this morning. It's really amazing. It commemorates stories that you don't understand how somebody could do that, and then on top of it, you don't know how they could survive it. And sometimes, in some cases, most cases, they don't. But this is a really special place, and man, I'm just so excited to bring you some segments from here this morning.
And you will. All right, Joey, standing by live down there in the Metro.
Yeah, nobody better to cover this.
That's right.
Joey Jones, yeah.
Meanwhile, another day, another protest. Why these anti-Israeli protest college students are now chanting about releasing people from jail.
Morning, an appeals court appears divided over the deportations of migrant gang suspects. One Obama-appointed judge seems to be siding with the migrants.
Nazis got better treatment under the Alien Enemy Act than has happened here.
Well, constitutional law attorney Katie Cherkowski joins us now. You know, Katie, so you had that Obama judge clear where she stands. She will be ruling against the U.S. government on this, I would predict. You had the Trump judge who indicated, maybe there'd be a narrow procedural ground where he'd side with the administration. So that leaves the George H.W. Bush appointee. So without asking you to read the tea leaves for us.
Well, I think that President Trump has full authority to use the Alien Enemies Act to deport members of Tren de Aragua, and that's what this has been used for. The issues have actually been pared down quite a bit to the question of whether these individuals deserve some sort of determination that they're actually members of that particular group. And I do think that that is consistent with the Supreme Court's prior interpretations of that act, that there has to be at least some determination of the membership. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we're kind of litigating war decisions here, and that is something that is in the exclusive authority of the president. So I would hope that the appeals court would side with the administration, but ultimately I think the Supreme Court will.
The foreign affairs power, of course, very broad. So that was at the appeals level, but taking it back down one level to the district court where Judge Boasberg is. We know, temporary restraining orders, they should be rare. Unfortunately, they are not with the Trump administration, it seems. But with Boasberg, how odd is it for a judge to say, look, the Supreme Court may decide against me on this. There's actually precedent that could go the other way. And yet you issued a restraining order, which you're only supposed to do if the other party is likely to succeed on the merits.
opinion, but also to remove dangerous people from this country.
Yeah, one other question there. The Alien Enemies Act, which that's what they are saying. We're invoking this Alien Enemies Act. It's a wartime statute, but we consider this to be an invasion happening. Do you think they succeed on that point? Trinidad and Tobago, there's a colorable argument. They want to establish territory, so it's an invasion in some sense. Does that succeed at ultimately SCOTUS?
Well, that is the big question here in terms of the technical aspects of the statute, whether this is an invasion or incursion by a foreign government or nation. And that is something that has to be kind of argued here. Now, there is some points that have been made by the administration that members of Trinidad and Tobago are infiltrated into the Venezuelan regime, and that it is backed in some part by the leadership there. So I think that has been not particularly used in the past in that way. But certainly, President Trump has the right to respond to even irregular war efforts on our own territory here. We don't often see war on our land, but he is the commander-in-chief and the president, and he's responsible for that.
Katie, one other topic we want to get to. This is Mahmoud Khalil. He's a Columbia University student, and he is arguing that he should be here. You have the United States government saying, no, we can take your green card at any moment. And as it turns out, there's an accusation that he hid his ties to some organizations, including UNRWA, that UN organization we pulled funding from for allegedly aiding and abetting Hamas. So Mahmoud Khalil, he's leaning hard on the First Amendment, but he is not a U.S. citizen. You don't get the full panoply of First Amendment rights. You get a modicum, but not full panoply as someone who's going to do it.
I think that the First Amendment arguments are a bit of a distraction here because, like you said, if you have a green card, there are other grounds that we can refer to your permission to be here if your presence is adverse to our foreign policy interests. And I don't think that the First Amendment argument he makes is very compelling. Fighting words, inciting riots, those are not even protected speech for U.S. citizens, let alone people who are here as a guest. So I think that that's a bit of a distraction, and even if he does have some First Amendment speech here, he can still be removed based on those other grounds.
Yeah, great point. The administration likely to succeed potentially on exposing these issues. Thank you so much, Katie Chirkowski. All right, well, if you're one of the millions of people who have used 23andMe, your DNA and privacy could be at risk. What you need to do with your data. But first, a new museum opening today honoring our nation's heroes with storm systems. We do have some showers and thunderstorms for Florida. We have leg effect snow still up and running across the Great Lakes in the Northeast. The system moving toward the Mid-Atlantic. And then our next big storm moves in midweek across the Northwest. And some of this energy is going to give us the potential for another severe weather outbreak as we head into the weekend. So coastal rain, mountain snow, that's going to be a big deal for them. But then we're going to have this setup for severe storms starting on Saturday through Sunday and Monday. So there's the setup. Again, some of these areas were hit hard a week and a half ago by the tornado outbreak. And so that's the big concern here. People are still, reeling from those storms, rebuilding, and we've got another threat as we go in through Sunday across the Mississippi River Valley, the Midwest, and up towards the Gulf Coast, and then Monday for the Southeast up towards the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. So we will continue to watch this for you. FoxWeather.com has all the latest details. We'll send it over to Brian Ford.
All right, thanks so much, Janice. Now this, the National Medal of Honor Museum in Arlington, Texas, opens today. The museum honors recipients of the highest military award for valor in the United States. And this morning, we're getting an inside look at some of the exhibits. Fox News contributor and Marine veteran himself, Johnny Joey Jones, is there now, along with the CEO of the National Medal of Honor Museum and retired Navy SEAL Captain Chris Godsey. Take it away, Joey.
Hey guys, not just a retired Navy SEAL captain, but also an astronaut. We can talk about that later. So I told him I was an astronaut for like 28 seconds one time, but he didn't think that was as cool. Listen, this is an amazing place. I'm humbled. It's hard to even be excited. I didn't have energy because there's some solemn air about this because their faces here, people have shaken their hands and now seeing artifacts from their recovery and the incident. It really is humbling. Tell us about the Medal of Honor and really tell us why we should care. Why is it important enough to build a museum around it?
Actually, that's been the core really of our existence for the last 3 years, conveying the reason why this is important to the country. It's our nation's highest award for valor on the battlefield, as you know. As such, that really represents the freedoms that those folks that gave their lives in some cases, if not me, then who let's take action right now, service over self, those kind of stories, digging deep into the bucket of courage, just kind of
anything that comes from the United States of America, that's the stories that we have with it. And these guys are all just, and one woman, they're all just ordinary people who found themselves in extraordinary situations that day. And we have the freedom we have today because you and I serve in the uniform of our United States of America, but also these guys stepped up and being the ultimate heroes. And that's what this museum is about, stories of our ultimate heroes.
You know, it absolutely is. I love the fact that this medal was created during the Civil War, probably the worst and best war our country's ever been through. So America dying on both sides. And so since then, there's been 3,528, one of those being a female in the Civil War. But the stories in this building, actually, you can't have all more than 3,500 stories in one building. But the stories you do have are pretty unique. So include Audie Murphy. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we wanted to make sure we covered all conflicts, all services. There's been representative medals from every branch of service. And Audie Murphy's a great example because he's somebody that people have heard of before. They've probably seen him on movies, Hollywood. His post-service life was super, super interesting. And people oftentimes don't realize when they see him in that capacity that he was a marijuana recipient. So telling that story is that artifacts from throughout his life, we've got clips from various parts of his acting career. And that's just one example. People don't realize that there's marijuana around them all the time.
Yeah, and really proud native son of Texas. I've been to his grave at Arlington National Cemetery, and now I get to see his exhibit. Guys, there's so much more to bring you. We're going to come to you every hour for the rest of the show. You got some buddies of mine here we're going to highlight too. So back to you guys.
Wow, it could be its own channel on your cable universe. Thanks so much, Johnny. Appreciate it. And we'll check in with you again. By the way, get tickets at mohmuseum.com. Thank you, Joey Jones and Chris Cassidy. Now to this, calling all cowboys. How these rodeo cows ended up in the middle of the Texas highway. I'm going to
It's 7:57 a.m. Potato Jam. you.
New York Times now reporting that Elon Musk is about to potentially get access to some of the nation's most closely...
Another morning to savor the crunchy nooks and cranny splendor of a Thomas's English muffin.
Tom, which is a nook and which is a cranny?
That's a nook, cranny, nook, cranny. I mean, they should be teaching this in school. Huzzah! A toast to breakfast.
Okay, ready? One more. 1, 2, and 3.
Cute. Not so fast. The general's coming with you.
Mom, he gave us a break on our car insurance, and he'll look after you too.
Yep, with flexible payment options for new drivers.
Okay, but why is Shaq coming too?
To show you how it's done.
For a great low rate, go with the General.
It's all downhill from here. Happy Monday, everyone. So last night, former President Biden saw Othello on Broadway. Joe was surprised by the cast, saying, "I didn't know Obama was in this." The Democratic Party struck the party. He helped. Took away Joe Biden's security clearance. That means Joe no longer has access to the daily briefs, which is too bad since those were the only briefs not covered.